Hi guys, Dave here, back again for another project overview. Today I'm going to split the talk into three parts. First I'm going to talk about the inspiration for this project, then I'll show you a little demo of it and how you can use it, and finally, for my diehard fans, you know who you are, I'll walk through the code a bit near the end of the video. So a little bit of background. Recently I did a video on this project called DBML SQLite. Long story short, it's free and you can get it on the Python package index, pip install dbml SQLite, or if you're using Poetry add dbml SQLite. It has a little API for generating SQLite data definition language from a file containing dbml schema, and it also has a little CLI that I built with the help of the Python click library, which, if I'm not mistaken, is made by the same persons behind the Flask project. So cool. You can generate an SQLite database schema from DBML. While building this, a feature of the click library caught my eye. And click has a lot of handy features, such as a platform agnostic way of echoing stuff out to the terminal, right? But what's more, it also has a feature that allows you to do something called echo via pager. All right. Now, what does that mean? Well, the click documentation hints what it means. Not exactly here, but in the, I couldn't quite find it, but somewhere in the actual documentation, not the API overview, but in the actual regular part of the documentation, they give a hint because they name the function in the example less. All right, so it's a reference to this tool. Now, if if you haven't heard of it, that's okay. You can check it out here on Wikipedia. If you have access to a Linux system or a Unix system, you probably have it installed already. It's an old tool, but sooner or later you'll run into it. It's a pager, basically, right? And the thing is, and maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but it's not immediately obvious to everyone when they first encounter the less tool what the advantage of it really is. As a programmer, your first programs are often printing stuff out to the terminal, right? Eventually, one day you'll try to print something out to the terminal that's so long it gets cut off at the top, and you realize, oof, only so many lines of output are kept in the terminal before, the oldest ones disappear. Well, that's frustrating when that happens. The first impulse for you may be to dig into your settings and see if you can expand how many lines are saved before they're discarded in the terminal, but you realize that's a fool's errand, and so you discover the less tool, right? And that's kind of the moment that you realize the less tool is actually pretty useful. So I'm just going to let's find a file that we can use the actual less tool on, and let's go to all right, and let's find I'll just use one of these. I'll use this file right here, the core file. So if you go core.py, right, this is what less does, okay? Not my tool, the actual less original tool. Right, so let's see page through, and actually you can search, okay, so, and then when you're done you can hit Q. All right, so let's do page through stuff, right? And you can kind of page through arbitrarily long files without worrying about running out of space in your terminal. So that's how pager tools work. And actually, if you've ever used man pages on Linux, which you can actually look at the man page for the less tool, and this shows you a little bit about how to use it. So it gives you a way to page through long files, and that's how pager tools like less work. And the click library gives you that handy function for displaying data in that kind of a pager in the user's terminal when you're building a CLI tool. Now, there are two ways to do that with click. The first, less exciting way, is to pass everything you want to page through at once to the echo via pager function. But the second, more exciting feature is, of course, you can pass a generator function into it instead. Now, I'm not going to go into details just now about how generator functions work. We'll get to that when I go over the code later. But suffice it to say, it means you can generate output for the pager on the fly, on demand, as needed, while the user scrolls/pages. So my idea was, hey, why not make a tool with this that allows you to page through SQLite database files like that? How handy would that be for development and simple sanity checks or simple investigations when you're working with SQLite in a command line environment? Any road, that's enough chit chat. Let's hit the demo. Okay, so you're gonna need Python 3.7 or higher, I believe. You can just do, if you can install it in a virtual environment, right? If your system Python, for some reason it's, 3.6 or lower, but you should, if it is, you can just install it in a virtual environment. But like on here, my Python 3, this is WSL for Windows, Ubuntu 20.04, and I think Python 3, the version is 3.8.5. So this is just fine. I can install it globally. The advantage of installing it globally is that you can use the lessqlite tool anywhere, right, at any time. So, of course, if you, well, anyways, so the thing about installation as well is after you install it, if you get a message in your terminal near the end of the installation output about how, oh, this isn't part of your path, or something like that, you might need to add the location that it installs to the path in order to use it, not as part of a project, right, but just as a CLI. So that's kind of like platform dependent and shell dependent. Like I'm using Z shell on this Ubuntu for Windows thing. So what I ended up having to do was I had to add this line right here to the top of my ZShrc in my home directory. Okay, but it could be different for you. So if you just Google it, you'll be able to figure it out. And I didn't actually develop this tool on the system. I developed it on a different system, Termux on an Android phone actually. And on that system, I didn't have to do that, right? So it's just system dependent whether you'll have to do that. But anyways, so once it's installed, you should be able to use it anywhere on the system. So to verify that it's installed. Actually, hold on. We're going to go into this. So to verify that it's installed, you can just type lessqlite --help. There you go. And then the help will show up. And actually, if you, ironically, if you want, because some of the help pages that you'll see later on in this tutorial, they get kind of long. So if you want, you can even pipe them to less, which is, I mean, it's pointless now, but it's kind of ironic. Anyways, so yeah, you get a message, about what this tool is about. So this tool, and actually, let me see here. Did I even? Let me, I didn't even show you the GitHub page. That's kind of important, isn't it? Right here, you can find it on GitHub. Okay, so you can go over it. And this README has all of the API documentation and examples and everything. But obviously this video is for the visual learners. So, and there's also, releases and stuff like that. So if you want to look at it on GitHub, you can do that too. Okay, back to the terminal. So we're gonna do a little bit of demo. So unless you like staring at this help page, you'll need an SQLite database. So I have a demo one here, seeded this test DB, and it's seeded with fake data from the Faker Python library. So you have to pass the database as an argument like this to the lessqlite command. So the only time that you don't need to pass the name of a database is if you're doing lessqlite --help. All right. That's the only time that you don't need to pass the name of a database. Otherwise, you're going to have to pass the name of one. So we're going to say lessqlite and then test.db. All right. And then after this, then if you just hit enter and don't type anything after that, it's actually not going to page through anything. It'll just print out some useful stats about the database in your terminal. So we'll show that here. So yeah, you can see it gives you the bytes, the amount of space that it takes up, and the number of tables, indexes, etc. Okay, so after you type the name of the database, there are two subcommands, right, that you can invoke after the database name. And you can only specify one database at a time, by the way. Well, only one database file at a time. After that, you can specify one of two commands, right? There's schema and there's tables. All right, so we're going to go over those in that order. First, we'll go over the schema one. It has its own help page. All right, so you can view it. It's kind of boring, but basically it tells you, you can view a database's schema. All right, and this one, it does page through the database schema. Okay, so it'll give you all the columns and the info about each column and each table. All right, so that can be useful to you. Then you hit Q to exit when you're done. So let's have a look at the tables subcommand. So the tables subcommand right here. This one actually is kind of long, this help page, so I'm going to actually pipe this to less. All right, so this is really where the power of the tool is, right? And most of the configuration options are for you to configure your experience of paging through the database. And some of these have, I think that they're helpful defaults. I think that they're reasonable, sane default values for some of these. But if you have a difference of opinion, of course, I'm open to that kind of criticism. But before we talk about these options, first, let's talk about this right here, the optional argument, because there is a difference between arguments and options. The argument, normally arguments are not optional, but in this case, it is optional. So basically, the table subcommand can take 0 or more arguments in the form of table names in your database file. So if you pass no table names, then it's going to assume you mean all of the tables. If, on the other hand, you provide table names, they can be separated by spaces, and the list of them will basically function as a white list of database tables you want to display in the pager. And then also note that this feature does allow you to change the order that tables are displayed in the pager. Okay, so remember we, well, first let's check the schema again in case you forgot. So we have table 1 and table 2. Those are the names of the tables 1 and 2. So if you pass none, okay, first is going to go to table 1, and spoiler alert, there's like 500 records in each table. Okay, so it's going to be a while. Right, what if you wanted to page through them in a different order? Well, you could go to 1. Okay, and now it's going to go through table 2 first before it does table 1. So you can do that. You can rearrange, the order that the tables are displayed in the pager. Once you have that figured out, you can start to consider. Once you have it figured out whether and which table names you're going to pass in, you can start to consider passing options. And you can pass the options after the table names in any order that you want. The options allow you to configure various, we'll say, more granular aspects of the paging experience. Some of the arguments themselves take options, and if they do, and I'll show you, but you do need to pass the option arguments to the options in the order specified in the help page, which I showed you before, right? So like the range here, this means that when you specify the range option, it takes 3 arguments in the form of text, which is the table name, and then 2 integers. And the chunk one, this takes an integer, a single integer argument. Truncate takes a single integer argument. Order by takes 3 text arguments. Okay, so we'll go over each of these, right? But yeah, so the first one, I guess, that we'll go over is maybe I don't know which one should we do first, huh? Let's do the stats one first, right? So, you know, instead of paging through the actual rows of the database tables, maybe to figure out how you're going to use these other options, maybe you want to use the stats one. Okay, so let's do that one first. So you just do stats, all right, and it gives you the stats of each table. Okay, and you know, I wonder. I actually don't even know the answer to this question. I just don't remember. Does it? I wonder if this works with table name arguments. Okay, yeah, so it does. It actually does. If you have a lot of tables and you don't want stats on literally all of them, you can whitelist which tables you want stats about. All right, so okay, that's good to know. So the next one is going to be, let's do, the chunk option. I think we should know about the chunk option. So if you don't pass the chunk option, you should know that it always defaults to 10, which I think is a good default. What it means is when the program feeds, when the program is, you know, getting records from the database to feed into the pager, instead of ripping each table into memory in its entirety all at once, the chunk value says, hey, at most pull a max number of this many chunk records into memory at a time for feeding into the pager. So 10 records. That way, even if you're, you know, if you have, for example, in our example, it's, you know, 500 records per table, instead of pulling all 500 records into memory at once, you know, pull 10 at a time into memory. Okay, so as needed, so that it's, you know, memory efficient, and that's part of how the generator functions work, right? Okay, so you can change the chunk to whatever positive integer you want. Just be careful, because if you set it to 0, so you can say, you know, chunk 2. Okay, now just do 2 at a time, or you can do 200 or whatever you want. But just if you set it to 0. That is how you get it to pull each table all at once into memory. Okay, and if you have a really, really large database, that could be, you know, not very cool. So that's how you do that. I mean, it doesn't change how you view anything, right? So, I mean, I don't even really know if there's kind of like a point in showing this to you, but behind the scenes, it is doing that, you know. But anyways, so yeah, just something to consider. The next option that you should know is the truncate option. All right. So you can specify an integer to the truncate option. By default, nothing is truncated. The truncate option indicates the max length to print of any given record field in the pager. So if you have records that contain fields with potentially ridiculously large field sizes, like, for example, the text of blog articles or something like that, well, you may want to truncate them, you know, and at most display, say, you know, the first few hundred characters or something. But just for demonstration purposes, we'll say 10, okay? And it may make the output look a little funny, but yeah. Yeah, it does make the output look a little funny, see? You know, but it truncates it, right? It makes it shorter, so that, you know, it's not taking up a lot of space. It's kind of specific use cases, but it's good to know that it's there. So the next is the order by option. So you can actually specify this option more than once. So you can specify it one or more times for each database table the pager will be displaying. So this option basically works the same way that order by statements work in SQLite select statements. So let me pull up the SQLite docs here. Okay, so if you've ever seen SQLite docs, they're really helpful. But you can see they give you a little bit of thing here with as far as ordering and how that works. So you can have an order by statements and an ordering term or ordering terms, and this is how each ordering term looks. Okay, and so you can have multiple ordering statements. It's kind of like and also this gives you a little bit of information on how the limit and offset expressions work, which is, you know, I mean, I use underneath. Which kind of, you know, use underneath, like, to power the statements that, you know, run this little tool that I built. And so anyways, if you need to know, like, a little bit more about SQLite, I highly recommend the SQLite website. It's a bit long in the tooth, I know, but it's I think the diagrams are cute, you know. So, okay, what were we talking about? We're talking about order by. So you need to pass each option every time you use the order by option. For each one, you need to pass it three parameters or three arguments to each order by option. So the first one needs to be the table that order by option applies to, followed by the column that you're ordering the records by, and finally the order, either ASC or DESC, okay, ascending or descending. So let's see here. Let's take a look at this schema again. We have a name column in the first one. All right. So let's try and order by the name and see what happens. We'll display both table. Well, actually, we don't need the second one, do we? So we'll just do order by. So 1, we're going to order by. We're going to apply this to the first table. We're going to say. What did we say? Right, name, and then we'll do descend. Well, let's do ASC for now, and let's see here. Okay, Aaron Barnes, Aaron Bender, Aaron Ross, Adam Bond. So you can see it's sorted by those. And let's try the other way, DESC. All right, Zachary Rodriguez, Yvonne Ruiz, William Miranda. So you see how that works? All right. So that's how the order by works. Of course, you could do order by ID ascending. Of course, it does certainly look a lot like that even without the order by statements. And that kind of brings me to another point, which is, you can see it's kind of the same. So the defaults, in the absence of an ordering statement in SQLite, the default SQLite ordering is used, which may not be what you expect. However, helpful hint is that for tables that have an integer primary key, which that's these tables, in SQLite, that's an alias for something called the row ID. Okay, so check this out if you want to know more about what that is. But if you have a primary key, you know, that's an integer, it's an alias for this, and this is, you know, if there is a row ID, I think, you know, it's not a without row ID table, it's not a virtual table. Then when you're doing your select statement without an order thing, pretty sure it's ordered it by that, right? So that's why it is actually ordered 1, 2, 3 in ascending order according to the ID by default. So, all right, I think that brings us to the last option, which is the one that I spent the most time probably debugging, if I'm being honest. It's the range option. Okay, the range option. So basically, after the ordering of records in a given table is taken care of, you can specify a range of records. That's not to say that you have to use this in conjunction with an order, but you can. You can use it in conjunction with the ordering, options. But the range, it allows you to specify a range of records for each table you're paging through. So the option takes a table name, and then it takes a positive integer representing the lower limit, which is inclusive, and a positive integer representing the upper limit, which is also inclusive. So if you look at this example, you're like record 2 through 6, okay. And then, it's going to go through the other table normally because we didn't, specify we didn't want that one. But try to separate these numbers for the range from the auto-incrementing integer primary keys, because that's not at all what these numbers refer to. It's the range of records however they're ordered. So what I mean by that is, okay, so let's do, I suppose I need 1, 2, 6, and then let's tag this on here just to show you that this applies to whatever order, right? So this is the second through the sixth record, just, you know, from that result set where it's ordered this way, you know. So it's not record range 2 through 6 of the IDs, you know, like literally it's of the result set, if that makes sense. So just keep that in mind. I think that the range, you know, the inclusive range for each table for the result set, I think that makes more sense than not more sense. I just thought that would be more user friendly than having people directly configuring SQLite limit and, you know, offsets. But, you know, I could be wrong. So anyways, questions, leave them below. I'm happy to look into any bugs if you find them. And if you do anything interesting with this project, drop me a link and I'll feature it in the GitHub README. So if you're ready to enter the nerd zone, let's take a look at the code, huh? So all right, so this is, I'm just gonna go through this briefly. So this click library that I'm using, it's pretty, just like Flask, it's a big believer in decorators, you know, and I really like the API of this click library, and it kind of automatically generates the help pages from this, you know, information that you give, you know, in your comments and things. So yeah, so this is the root command, and then the subcommands are displayed below that. And so this is the schema command, and then this is the tables command. So yeah, look at all the decorators for the options and everything for the tables command, you know. And so it gets kind of, I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't look very pretty, but you know, it's really powerful. It allows you to make really cool. But basically a little bit more about how this works. So, you know, there's actually two generators, right? So, or there's kind of a set of generators. So, in the end, there is a what do you call it? Let me scroll way down here. I think it's right, the line generator. Okay, the line generator is what I actually pass into the echo via pager function. Okay, and what that does is every time it needs more stuff to spit out onto the screen for the pager, it's going to call this, and then it's going to pick up where it left off with the yield statement. So if you don't know how generator functions work, it's basically the yield keyword is kind of like the return keyword, but instead of like a normal function or, you know, subroutine with a return statement where it runs once and then it exits once it reaches a return statement, a generator function, it pauses when it hits the yield statement and it spits something out, but then, you know, then you can pick up again later on, and then it picks up where it left off, and all the state internal to the generator, you know, it's the same as it was before. So actually, this generator, you can see it takes another generator into it, and then every time it yields the next thing from the other generator. Well, what is this other generator that I passed in? Oops. Oh, that's weird. I've never seen that before. Naughty me, grabbing the mouse. So, you know, that is going to be either like the stats generator, right? It's going to be either the stats generator or the tables generator. These, what these generators do these generators are what generate the chunks of records, right, from the database. So they go and they pull a chunk of records into memory, and then every time they're called, they, by the outer generator, you know, they give it a, you know, the next line, you know, of records or whatever it is. And I'm sorry, I gotta stop doing that. And then execution in the stats generator or the tables generator, well, it halts but the state internal to this generator function, it's preserved where it left off, until next time it's called again, and then it picks up, and then it, so yeah, so I have this kind of system with generator functions that feeds the pager to make it easy and effective to page through arbitrarily large SQLite databases. Because think about it, you could, in theory, maybe not commonly, but you could have an SQLite database that's, I don't know, 50 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes or something just absurd, well, in that case, you can't, unless you I mean, you're not going to pull all that into your memory at once, right? Your RAM, I mean, that's not going to work. So you just kind of pull it as needed, and that's the idea behind this. So that's it. I hope you don't find this this terminal effect, this retro terminal effect that I have. I hope you don't find it annoying. I quite like it, actually, but it's kind of gimmicky, and I might get rid of it. Just kind of playing around with the Windows terminal app. So I do have one small problem. I'm using the what is it, Firacode font, and on my phone in the Termux app, all the ligatures work with that font, but some of the ligatures don't work quite the same in the Windows terminal. So if you have experience with getting ligatures to work with fonts in Windows terminal, let me know. Okay, other than that, I think I've rambled on way too long, so thank you very much for everything, and talk to you next time. Bye, guys.